Hello, Matthews Gatos here. Welcome to Chapter 7, Rational Expression and Equations, Lesson number 9, Solving Problems Involving Rational Equations, or everybody's favorite, word problems. Now, I hope you agree with me that word problems are awesome. Well, at least I think they are. If you don't think word problems are totally awesome, I hope you will at least agree that mathematics gives us hope that every problem has a solution. So without further ado, let's find some of those solutions in these word problems. Okay, first example here. We have Gary, who bought a package of golf shirts for $648. He keeps one for himself, gives one to his wife, and one to each of his 4 children. Sells the remaining golf shirts for a total of $900. Now this question is going to take us through a bunch of steps because it's introducing us to a word problem, but I just want to be really clear, if this was a test or a quiz or a diploma question, they wouldn't take you through step by step by step. They would just simply ask you the question straight out. So they would jump all the way to part E, which says, if he made a profit of $12 on each golf shirt he sold, how many shirts were in the box? But because we're just starting this out, they're going to take us through all the steps, which is nice. So first part, we don't know how many golf shirts there are in the package. So let's say there are X shirts in the package. I want to write an expression for the number of golf shirts that he sold. So the ones that he sold. So if there are X in the box and he gave away one to his wife, himself, and his 4 kids, he gave away 6 shirts. In other words, he did not sell 6 of those shirts. So the number of shirts that he sold, X minus 6. Now I just want to jump down to C because it ties in nicely. Write an expression for the selling price of each golf shirt. So the selling price is the total price that he sold divided by the number of shirts he sold. So his sales totaled $900. So I'm going to take $900, that's my total sales, and divide it by how many shirts he sold. And that would be my expression of the selling price for each golf shirt. Now that's the selling price. Let's talk about the expression for how much he paid for each golf shirt. So the price that he paid for each golf shirt is the total cost divided by the number of shirts he bought. So the total cost was $648. And how many did he buy? Well, we don't know how many were in the package. That's the variable X. So the buying price is 648 divided by X. The next part, we want to do an expression for the profit. So the profit is money in, which is the sales, take away money out, which is the cost. So the profit per shirt is the selling price per shirt minus the buying price per shirt. And we found out both of these parts in D and C. So the profit per shirt will be 900 over X minus 6, take away 648 over X. So now, and this is where I would jump into for the question, I wouldn't have asked you A, B, C, and D. I would jump straight to E and say, if he makes a profit of $12 on each golf shirt, write an equation that can be solved to determine the number of golf shirts. So the profit per shirt is 12, so I just replace that with 12, and this will be the equation that I will now solve to figure out how many golf shirts were in that box. So let's go ahead and do that. So because there is not fraction equal to a fraction, I cannot use crisscross. I have to use balance. So let's look at my lowest common denominator. What am I going to multiply every term by to get rid of the fraction? Well, to get rid of my X minus 6, I would have to multiply by an X minus 6. To get rid of my X, I would also have to multiply by X. So the lowest common denominator, 1 of each factor. Non-permissible values. What value of X would cause us to divide by 0? Well, 6 take away 6 is 0, so I can't have 6. And if I replaced X with 0, that would also cause me to divide by 0. So that is my non-permissible values. So using balance, what I do is I multiply every single term by the lowest common denominator. And by doing it to every single term, I maintain the balance. So multiplying by X minus 6 and dividing by X minus 6. That cancels out. They are inverse operations. So X minus 6 cancels. I'm left with 900 times X. Take away. Multiply by X, divide by X. I'm left with 648 times X minus 6. Equals to, on the other side, I have all of these things multiplied together. I'm just going to do my monomials up front, which is 12 times x, 12x, times x minus 6. So now let's tidy this up a little bit. 900x take away 648 times x, negative 648 times negative 6. So I can plug that into my calculator and I get positive 3,888 equals distributive property, 12x times x, 12x times negative 6. Okay, so now that I have this, I want to set it all equal to 0. Before I do that, let's just combine our like terms. So I have 900 x's and I take away 648 x's. So I'm left with 252x plus 3,888 equals to 12x squared minus 72x. So because it's a quadratic, I want to set it equal to 0. So I am going to subtract 252x from both sides and subtract 3,888 from both sides. So now this all ends up being 0 equals 12x squared, and then I have negative 72 take away 252, and that is negative 324x minus 3,888. So we wanted to show that it equals to this quadratic and then solve it. So notice this quadratic has no number in front. It has a value of 1. This has a value of 12. So if we've done this correctly, I can just divide all my terms by 12, and if I'm doing it correctly, I should end up with the same answer. So 0 divided by 12 is 0. 12 divided by 12 is 1. 324 divided by 12 is 27. And 3,888 divided by 12 is 324. So yes, that matches. So I'm on the right track. So because I have a quadratic, I can use quadratic formula, or I can just put it into my calculator. I'm just going to put it into my calculator and find my x-intercepts. So I put it into my calculator. I had to adjust my window a little bit to help me out. Okay, and I see that I have two x-intercepts. So I have negative 9 and 36. Well, negative 9 doesn't make sense in the context of the question. I can't have a negative number of t-shirts. So that's an extraneous root. So 36 works. So therefore I can say there are 36 t-shirts in the box. Okay, so some guidelines for solving word problems. Obviously, reading the question carefully. Make sure you know what you're being asked for, and usually what you're being asked for is the variable, as in that last question, how many t-shirts were in the box? That was x. So you introduce a variable to represent what you're solving for. Write your equation, solve your equation using crisscross or balance, and then state the solution with the appropriate units. I'm going to add on here that we need to remember the units because it is a word problem. And you guys know I'm a big fan of the check. So check that your solution is correct and also that it makes sense. Like that last question, we can't have a negative number of t-shirts. Okay, a lot of the questions that we use for rational expressions are distance, speed, time questions. So I'm going to show you a little trick they use in science for distance, speed, time. So I do this little triangle and it has 3 different parts. The parts are in alphabetical order, distance, speed, time. So what this means is distance on the top is equal to speed times time. When I solve for time, I have a fraction, so time is distance divided by speed. And same thing for the s on the other side. If I'm solving for s equals distance over time, and you can see that there. Okay, so that can help you guys to figure out the formulas for distance, speed, and time. So let's try this question. Competing in an endurance race, Shannon cycled for 120 kilometers and then swam for 12 kilometers. Her average cycling speed was 8 times faster than her average swimming speed. Shannon took 9 hours to complete the race. Okay, and so average swimming speed is S, write an expression for average cycling speed, and then we're going to complete the whole table, and here's what we're trying to solve. How, what her speed was for swimming if she took 9 hours to complete the race. So with distance, speed, time questions, the biggest mistake students make is putting everything into the table. So what I want you to do is my little tip here, fill, calculate. And we're going to calculate the time using the formula that we saw over here. Time is distance over speed. So don't make the mistake of trying to put too much into the table. So let's look. Let's read this again. So she cycles for 120 kilometers. So that's 120. And swims for 12. Okay, so I've done my first fill. Now, her cycling speed was 8 times faster than her swimming speed. So since we're comparing cycling to swimming, notice we have the variable as swimming. So this is the time it takes to swim. She cycles 8 times faster. So her cycling speed is 8 times her swimming speed. So it's 8x. I've done my 2 fills. So I did fill, and now I'm going to do calculate. So time is distance divided by speed. So 120 over 8x and 12 over x. So now we want to write the equation, and we're going to use the fact that it took 9 hours to complete the race. So the time to cycle plus the time to swim is the total, which is 9 hours. So here's the time it took to cycle. Here's the time it took to swim. We're going to add those two and get 9 hours. So now we have an equation that we can solve. So let's go ahead and solve that. I don't have fraction equal to a fraction, so I have to use balance. So let's look at what we can do here. So 8x on the denominator, I'm going to actually rewrite that. Instead of 8x, I'm going to write it as 8 times by x. Okay, so to get rid of a times by 8, or sorry, a divide by 8, I would multiply by 8. To get rid of the x, I would times by x. Looking at my next denominator, to get rid of a dividing by x, I would multiply by x, so I've already got that. So my lowest common denominator is just one of each factor, so it's an 8x. Non-permissible value, since I have a monomial, my non-permissible value is 0. So now I'm going to use balance. I'm going to multiply every single term by 8 times x. So multiply by 8, divide by 8, and this is gone. Multiply by x, divide by x, this is gone. I'm left with 120. Plus, multiply by x, divide by x, that's gone. So I'm just left with 12 times 8 equals, and these are all monomials, so I just multiply them together. So 8 times 9 is 72 times x is 72x. And then I have a nice, oh, I'm missing my variable. Where is my variable? Oh, I don't have a variable. Okay, I thought I was making a mistake. So now I just have a nice linear equation to solve. So I just add 120 and 96 together to get 216. Equals 72, and then I just divide both sides by 72. There we are, and I get x is equal to 216 divided by 72 is 3. So x was your swimming speed, so now you know how fast she was swimming. In this next example here, we have student council traveling from Knoxville to Harperville for the Student Council National Conference. Based on the travel budget allowed for the trip, St. Andrews students have 2 options. They can leave tonight by bus, or they can save 3 hours by leaving tomorrow and using the express train, which travels 25 kilometers an hour faster than the bus. So you hear how that's being compared to the bus? So since the express train is being compared to the bus, notice the bus has a variable of x. So if the train travels 25 kilometers an hour faster, the train speed is x plus 25. The distance between Knoxville and Harperville is 1,500 kilometers. So what we're going to do is determine the average speed of the train and calculate how long it would take to travel between Knoxville and Harperville by express train, because we're saving 3 hours. So we've done the fill and the fill. We're now going to do the calculate. So calculate the time is distance divided by speed, 1,500 over x. For the train, distance over speed, 1,500 over x plus 25. So the bus time, take away the train time, is 3 hours, because you're saving 3 hours by taking the express train. You're only saving 3 hours. The difference between those times is 3 hours. So I'm going to take my bus time and subtract my train time, and the difference there is 3 hours. So that becomes the equation that I'm going to solve. Okay, so over here, let's look at the lowest common denominator. So to get rid of a dividing by x, I would multiply by x. To get rid of a dividing by x plus 25, I would multiply by x 25. So that is my lowest common denominator, one of each factor. So non-permissible value of the monomial is 0. Non-permissible value of x plus 25 is the opposite, which is negative 25. So since I don't have fraction equal to a fraction, I can't use crisscross. So what I am going to use is, again, balance. So looking at balance, I'm going to multiply every term by the lowest common denominator. So multiplying by x and dividing by x, that cancels. And I'm left with 1,500 multiplied by x plus 25. Multiply by x plus 25, divide by x plus 25, I'm left with 1,500 times x equals, let's multiply our monomials up front, 3x times x plus 25. Okay, so distributive property. So I'm going to do 1,500 times by x. 1,500 multiplied by 25 minus 1,500x equals distributive property. 3x times x, 3x squared. 3x times 25 is 75x. Just take that out. 75x. Excuse me. So this is gone. So 37,500 is equal to 3x squared plus 75x. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to subtract 37,500 from both sides. That's gone, and I get 0 equals 3x squared plus 75x minus 37,500. So now that I have that set to 0, I can solve this using the quadratic formula, or I can plug it into my calculator. So I'm going to use my calculator to do this. So I put my equation into my calculator, 0 into y2. I have to adjust my windows. So using context and your y-intercept, you can help set your windows. So looking at your equation, you know your y-intercept is all the way down at 37,300. So you just want to make sure that that kind of is included. That's why I went to 50,000. So I have my solutions ready to go. So looking at this, I had an x-intercept at negative 125 and an x-intercept at 100. So obviously here you cannot have negative speed. Speed has to be positive. So this is an extraneous root. So the solution is x equals to 100. In other words, the bus has a speed of 100 kilometers an hour. So to summarize your table with distance, speed, time, I want you guys to use fill, calculate. Always check your answers and eliminate solutions that don't make sense, like a negative speed, a negative number of people, and state your final answer with units. So I hope that this word problem helped, and can you imagine if we could rewrite history to show the importance of word problems? For example, the moon landing. Houston, we have a word problem. But now you would be able to solve that word problem. So can you guys do assignment 1 to 11? Don't do number 5, omit that question. I hope this video helped, and I look forward to seeing you for the next one.